Alright everybody, this is my second video on building this vent hood here. I want to thank everybody that commented on the first video. I'm a little nervous public speaking, and the positive comments really kind of helped out a lot. Anyway, let's get started because I want to make this quick as we can. Last video I went over the design a little bit and we got started into the layout. Now, the last video I was just starting on this board right here. This is laying out my curve for the side and the front of the vent hood. You see I've got some stuff screwed down to it. We'll get to that in a minute. But what I wanted to show you was last time I showed you how to achieve this curve, how to draw it out. Now after I drew it out, I took my jigsaw and I left it a little proud. When we say proud in woodworking, that means we leave a little excess to the front of the line. I left a little excess so I can sand to the line to get my curve nice and smooth. So what we did, we cut it out with a jigsaw, left it a little proud, then I clamped it down to the table, took my belt sander and sanded this edge. Now once you get that edge to the line, you might want to take a piece of hand sandpaper, break the edge, knock the splinters off, because you're going to want to be able to take your hand and run your hand down there and feel it, because your hand is going to tell you more than your eyes will when you're doing a curve on anything. Your hand will feel any imperfection in it where you might miss something when you're looking at it. But anyway, let's move over here. We've got that. I took that and transferred it to my big layout. You can see the lines on the side. I just took the template, set it on here, lined it up, marked my curves so I'd have that on my layout. Now, you'll see I've got two lines. I've got two lines right here. That's the front of my vent hood, and this is going to be the front of my rib that holds the curved plywood. This is, well, MDF. This is going to be a piece of 1/4 inch MDF. That's what that line represents right there. That's what that space is. Now, I've got that marked on there, and you'll see I had my center line. That was this. That was the center line that I started out with to start the whole layout. Now you'll see I got another line right here. What I did, instead of doing two separate layouts, I just put this line right here, and that represents the back of the hood, and that gives me a side view. If you look from that line to the front, that's the side view of my vent hood all the way up. Alright, so we've got that. We've got our curve. So we got that. So we go over, we need ribs. We need ribs to nail that 1/4 inch to, so we go back over here. I took this board right here. This is just a little sacrificial piece of 1/2 inch. I took it and I had everything flipped over when I did it. I didn't have that screwed to the table yet, but I take it and we've got to get the angles on the top and bottom. So I took that board, set on here, lined up with this corner here, lined up with this corner here, and then I took a pencil and just mark that angle on the board. Now I take this over to my miter saw, and all I do, once I've got it on there, all I do is line this up with my pencil mark to get the right miter. Figure it out what we've got. Now half the time I don't even look at the gauge. I don't even worry about what it is. But since we're doing a video here, I know you can't see that, but it's a 12-degree bevel is what I've got there. Like I say, I usually don't worry about it. As long as it fits, it fits. Alright, but anyway, I had that. So I set that up, made sure it was the right size with my templates, put it back on there, lined it up, and then I marked my curve. I did that on this board just so I could play around and see what I needed to do. I wanted to make sure that I had enough meat on the back side that I didn't have to go with a wider board. But I got that. It worked out fine. I got a 3.5 inch wide board. That's going to be my ribs once they get cut out. So what I did from there, I took some 3/4 material, ripped it 3.5, came over here, left my miter set up so I didn't have to keep changing it. I left it set up, I got my height set, I set me up a stop, and I cut all my ribs out at once. So then I had 3.5-inch boards just like this. I take those, once I've got that, that's when I set up all this. I set me a stop up here, then I put my board on here, lined it up with those corners, lined it up the way it's supposed to be, set this board behind it, so I've got me a stop behind it, and screwed it down. So now I've got this. Then I take all my ribs, bring them, put them on there, and I take a marker and I mark the curve that's going on the ribs. And once I've got that curve on the ribs, I take a jigsaw and I cut it out. Same thing, I cut it out proud. You can see how rough that looks. I'm cutting it out pretty proud on mine because my jigsaw blade tends to walk. So anyway, cut it out proud like that. Flip them back over, put them in the jig, and screw them down. This one hasn't been done. This one's been done. So we'll look at it. You can see I put it in my jig and I screwed it down. You want to screw it or clamp it, either way, because we take a router bit. I took a straight router bit, and that sucker is dull as it can be. It's probably going to be the last time I use it, but that is my router bit. I set it on here and just route that out to fit my template. And you're going to want to screw it or clamp it down because that router bit will try to pull this out of the template if you don't. But that's what I did. I screwed it down, clamped it down, routed it, and then I've got my curve on my ribs. Always mark the top or the bottom. You need to make sure you know which way it goes so you don't get mixed up. Alright, so we got that. Now I took that, and I don't want it to be so wide here because that might interfere with my pipe, my vent pipe. So what I did was I trimmed them down. You can see where I cut the top and the bottom to where I needed it to be. Those are my finished ribs right there. I cut out some extra. It's a good idea to cut out extra. I cut out enough to do 2, but if I was you, I'd cut out some extra no matter what, just in case you mess up. Alright, now we go back to our layout here. I'm trying to be kind of quick with this, but we need a top and a bottom to attach those ribs to. So I've got everything laid out the way I need it to be to figure it out. This is the back of my vent hood, so from here to right behind this 1/4 inch is how deep my bottom needs to be. When we talk about depth in cabinets, we talk about how far it comes off the wall. So that is my depth off the wall, from there to there, right behind that 1/4 inch line. Alright, now I want to know my width, so from that line right there behind that 1/4 inch to this line, that's the size of my top, which ended up for me being 19.5 by 14.5. That was my top board. I cut it out of a solid piece of 1/2 inch plywood because I want it to stay square. Now my bottom board, I did the same thing, but you can see there's a little bevel right there. So what I do on that, I get my measurement from long point to long point, or from the back to the long point. That gives me the size that my bottom needs to be. So, but I got to deal with this bevel because I need that on my board. So what I do is I take a board, lay it on my template, put it right to that corner, and then mark the top. Same way I was talking about cutting the ribs, I take that over to my miter saw, and I just match it up and make that miter right there. It turned out to be like a 20-degree bevel, but I do that on that board, and then I take it to my table saw, and when I'm ready to cut that on my board, that's what I do. But anyway, first off, I cut my top and my bottom to size. I've got it cut to size. Now to cut that bevel on it, on the bottom, now the top piece was square. We're fine with the top piece being square. The bottom piece, to cut that bevel on it, I've got it cut to size, so I put me a sacrificial fence on the saw. And you can see how my blade comes right through the side of the fence there. That's so we don't lose any width on the board, it just cuts the bevel. Like I say, if you got any questions, just put some comments up. I'll try to answer anything I can. But this is what we did. Now from our top and our bottom, I laid out where I want all my ribs to go. Now from laying those out, I took that, I did like the other thing, I started out with a center line. Then I took my center line, put on the bottom piece, and I just transferred my measurements from that for all the ribs, so they line up with the top piece. And then we just start putting them in where they go. So I've got the top and the bottom started. And that's just about all for this video, but before I go, I wanted to show you my mistake. I got so into doing the videos yesterday that when I did my ribs and my layout, and I did my half-inch top and my half-inch bottom, I'm supposed to be from the bottom of this trim to the top of this trim. That's what my hood is supposed to be. That's what the cowl is supposed to be. I did not account for my top and my bottom. I got sidetracked, so I'm actually an inch taller than I should be. But I can compensate on that. We'll take one of these ribs and I'm gonna show you. I'll show you what I'm gonna do. If you can see, it's hard to hold this camera and see. But you can see the rib lining up on the back. That's where we're supposed to stop. And that's where we're supposed to stop. But I'm an inch bigger, so we'll actually be stopping somewhere up here. But it still keeps my curve right. If we move it up, it still keeps my curve right. But it brings me up and I'm taller than what I'm supposed to be. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take and trim my bottom box. I've got it 10 inches tall. So I'm just going to make that 9 inches tall because I want to keep my height off the cooktop. So anyway, mistakes happen. You just got to learn how to compensate. I could take it all apart and cut it down. I should have took a ½ inch off the top and a ½ inch off the bottom of my ribs. But I'm just going to compensate, and it's not really going to hurt me. Alright y'all, thanks for watching, and we'll have another video here as soon as I can.